The moment my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "This is not your house anymore, old man," I did not raise my voice. I did not slam my fist on the table. I picked up my phone, walked to the back porch, and called my brother. "It's time," I said. He said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up, sat down in the old rocking chair my wife had picked out 31 years ago, and I waited, because I had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Let me back up. My name is not important. What is important is that I'm 64 years old. I spent 38 years building an insurance consulting firm from a single rented desk in downtown Columbus, Ohio, and I raised my son alone after his mother passed from ovarian cancer when he was 11, just the two of us. We ate cereal for dinner more times than I can count. We figured things out together. I thought we were close. I thought I knew him. His name is Cadden. He is 33 years old. He has his mother's eyes and, it turns out, none of her character. He married Yvonne 4 years ago. I tried to like her. I genuinely tried. She is the kind of person who keeps score of everything, every favor, every slight, every dollar, and she never ever forgets. She came from a family where money was always the language of love and the weapon of control. And she brought both of those things into my son's life, and eventually into mine. The first sign was small. They had been married about 6 months when Caden asked if they could move into my house temporarily while they saved for a down payment on their own place. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my son. Temporary became 8 months. 8 months became a year. During that time, Yvonne redecorated the living room without asking. She moved my wife's photographs into a box in the garage. When I brought them back inside, she said the frames were dated and they made the room feel heavy. I should have said something then. I know that now. By the time the second year started, they were still there, and Yvonne's parents, her father Winston and her mother June, had begun visiting every other weekend. Long weekends. 4-day weekends. Weekends that stretched into Tuesday morning. Winston would sit in my armchair, drink my coffee, and offer opinions on how I kept my own lawn. Last Thanksgiving, Cadden told me over the phone that he had invited Winston and June to stay through the weekend. I said that was fine. When they arrived on Wednesday evening, they had 2 large suitcases each. I assumed it was just overpacking. It was not overpacking. Thanksgiving dinner was on Thursday. I'd gotten up at 5 in the morning, thawed and prepped a 19-pound bird, made my wife's cornbread stuffing from her handwritten recipe card, and set the table the way she always set it, with the good china, the one set we only use twice a year. I did all of it myself because I wanted to, because this was still my house, because Thanksgiving still meant something to me. By noon, the house was full. Caden and Yvonne, Winston and June, Yvonne's younger sister and her boyfriend, a cousin I had never met. 9 people total, plus me. I cooked for all of them. We sat down at 2 o'clock. I said grace. Winston began talking about a real estate investment he was working on before I had even finished saying amen. About 20 minutes into the meal, Yvonne set her fork down and looked at me with the particular expression she used when she had rehearsed something. "We wanted to talk to you today," she said, "as a family." I looked at Caden. He was looking at his plate. "We think it makes the most sense," she continued, "for my parents to move in here permanently. There's enough room. Winston and June are getting older. It would help everyone." I put my napkin on the table. I looked at her. I looked at my son, who was still studying the tablecloth, like it contained the answers to questions he didn't want to be asked. "This is my home," I said. "I'm not running a boarding house." Winston cleared his throat. June looked at the ceiling. The cousin I didn't know helped himself to more sweet potatoes. "It wouldn't be a boarding house," Yvonne said, and her voice had shifted into something harder. "It would be family taking care of family, unless that's too much for you." "Yvonne," I said very calmly, "this is not a discussion I'm prepared to have at Thanksgiving dinner." "When would you be prepared?" she said. "You're never available, you're always busy. You're always doing something more important." "I'm available right now," I said, "and my answer is no." That was when she threw the plate. It was not a full plate. She had mostly finished her turkey, but she picked it up and she threw it down the table toward me, and it hit the good china gravy boat my wife's mother had given us as a wedding gift, and the gravy boat shattered. The table went completely silent. I stood up. I looked at my son. "Are you going to say something?" I asked him. He said, "Dad, just calm down." Those 4 words were the ones that hurt the most, not the plate, not the shattered gravy boat, not Yvonne's face, which had gone red with something she probably told herself was righteousness. It was my son telling me to calm down in my own home while his wife's food was still dripping off my late wife's china. I picked up my phone. I walked to the back porch. I called my brother. His name is Erwin. He is 67, retired, and the most methodical human being I have ever known. Erwin spent 25 years as a forensic accountant before he retired, and he has the kind of mind that finds patterns in things most people never look at twice. 3 months before that Thanksgiving, Erwin had called me. He had been helping me sort through some financial paperwork after my accountant retired, and I needed someone I trusted to help me transition to a new firm. While he was reviewing my records, he found something that didn't add up. A line of credit I didn't remember opening, a cosigner on a refinanced account, a mailing address update on 2 of my financial accounts, updated to a UPS store box on the east side of Columbus. Someone had been redirecting my mail. Erwin had come to my house on a Saturday morning and laid everything out on my kitchen table. We went through it for 6 hours. What we found by the end of that day was not minor. Caden had used my social security number to open a home equity line of credit against my house. The house I own outright, the house with no mortgage, the house I paid off in 2019 after 31 years. He had drawn $73,000 out of that line over 14 months. The statements had been going to the UPS box. He had forged my signature on the original application. I had never seen a single document. There was more. 2 of my investment accounts, both held at a brokerage I had used for 20 years, had had their contact information updated. The phone number on file was not mine. The email address on file was not mine. Erwin suspected Caden had been attempting to position himself to make changes to those accounts, though he hadn't moved on them yet. And there was the business. My firm. I had made Caden a signatory on one of the business operating accounts 3 years ago, during a period when I had a minor health issue and wanted someone I trusted to handle payroll if I couldn't. He had used that access. Over 16 months, he had made 41 transfers out of that account, all just under the $10,000 reporting threshold, totaling $112,000. He had transferred the money to an account I could not identify. I sat at that kitchen table in September, looking at those numbers, and I thought about the 11-year-old boy I had raised alone. I thought about the cereal dinners. I thought about the way he used to fall asleep in the car on long drives home, and how I would carry him inside and put him in bed without waking him up. And then I thought, he's been stealing from me for over a year. Erwin had already contacted an attorney before he came to me. He had also, quietly, carefully, through a connection he had from his accounting days, spoken with an investigator at the county prosecutor's office. What Caden had done constituted felony identity theft, bank fraud, and elder financial abuse under Ohio law. The investigator had been very interested, but Erwin advised me to wait, not to confront Caden yet, not to change anything or close any accounts or do anything that might tip him off. Let him think everything was normal. Let the investigation build. I waited. For 3 months, I sat across from my son at dinner and passed him the salt, and asked him how work was going, and I knew what I knew, and I said nothing. Thanksgiving was the day Erwin and I had agreed would be the last day of waiting. The prosecutor's office had completed their review. Warrants had been signed. Erwin was coordinating with a detective on the case, and would give the signal once I confirmed that Caden and Yvonne were in the house. When I called Erwin from the back porch and said, "It's time," that was the signal. He said he'd be there in 20 minutes. He meant the detective and 2 patrol units would be there in 20 minutes. I went back inside. Yvonne was clearing the table. Winston was standing in the kitchen doorway, looking at me with his arms crossed like he was the one who had reason to be unhappy. Caden was sitting in his chair, looking at his phone. I sat back down at the head of the table. I poured myself a glass of water. I asked June if she wanted more coffee, and she said yes, and I got up and poured it for her, because whatever was happening between me and her daughter and my son, June had never done anything to me, and she didn't deserve rudeness. "So you called your brother," Yvonne said. She was standing in the doorway now too, a stack of dishes in her hand. "What did he say? Is he coming to take your side?" "He's coming to join the family," I said, "since you brought up family." She made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and went back to the kitchen. 17 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Caden got up to answer it. He opened the front door and found Irwin, and behind Irwin, a detective named Bauer and 2 uniformed officers from Columbus PD. "What is this?" Caden said. His voice was different from the voice he had used at dinner. "Smaller." "Caden," Detective Bauer said, "we have a warrant for your arrest." The next several minutes happened the way things like that happen, with a lot of noise and people saying things that didn't quite connect into sentences, and Yvonne coming out of the kitchen still holding a dish towel, and Winston stepping forward and then stepping back again when he realized that what was happening was not something he could interrupt. Yvonne said, "What are you doing? What is this about?" Detective Bauer said, "Mom, I'm going to need everyone to step back." "He's my husband," she said. "You can't just—" "Ma'am." She looked at me. The expression on her face was one I will not forget. It was the expression of someone who had built a plan on the assumption that the person they were stealing from would never find out. "You did this," she said. "He did this," I said, and I looked at my son. Caden wouldn't meet my eyes. They took him out to the car. Detective Bauer stayed behind to speak with me. He confirmed the charges: felony identity theft, 2 counts of bank fraud, and elder financial abuse. A first-degree misdemeanor charge that Irwin's attorney contact had told me carried potential additional civil liability. The detective told me someone from the Financial Crimes Unit would be in touch the following week. After Detective Bauer left, the house was very quiet. Yvonne took her parents upstairs. I could hear them through the ceiling, voices going back and forth, her voice the loudest and her parents the quietest. After about 30 minutes, they came downstairs with their luggage, all 4 suitcases of it, and left without speaking to me. I stood in my kitchen and looked at what was left of the Thanksgiving I had spent all morning cooking, and I felt a number of things. I do not want to describe all of them. Some of them were about Caden, and some of them were about my wife, and some of them were about the kind of grief that has no clean category. Irwin stayed. He sat at my kitchen table, and I made a fresh pot of coffee, and we ate cold stuffing out of the pan and didn't talk much. After a while, he said, "You did the right thing." I said, "I know." "It doesn't feel that way," he said. "It was not a question." "No," I said, "it doesn't. There are people who will tell you that you should always protect your children, and I understand that impulse. I spent 33 years protecting mine. But there is a line between protecting your child and allowing yourself to be destroyed by someone who was once your child. And when that line is crossed, the only thing left to protect is the truth. I have since learned a few more things. The account Caden had been transferring money into was a joint account, one that Yvonne's name was also on, which means she knew. The attorney I retained has filed a civil recovery action against both of them. The house equity line has been frozen and is being unwound through the bank's fraud resolution process. My attorney tells me I will recover the principal, though it will take time. There is also the matter of what Yvonne told people afterward. She told her family, and apparently some of Caden's friends, that I had set my son up, that I had lured them into the house on Thanksgiving deliberately, that I had manufactured the evidence, that I was a controlling and vindictive old man who could not bear to see his son be independent. I have heard versions of this story from 3 different people who felt I should know what was being said. I do not spend a great deal of time thinking about it. What I think about is this. I raised that boy in a house that still smells like his mother's hand lotion. If you stand in the right corner of the right room on the right kind of morning. I raised him in a house where the kitchen table has 3 sets of scratches in the wood because we used to play Legos there when he was small, and the pieces would scrape when we pushed them around. I raised him in a house where I never, not once, put my own comfort above his safety or his future, or his need to know that someone in this world loved him without conditions. He made his choices. He will live with them. And I'm still here. In my house, at my table, with my wife's handwritten recipes in the drawer by the stove, and a new gravy boat I ordered online that is not the same as the one that broke, but is the right color, and my brother who still comes over on Sunday mornings and drinks too much of my coffee and doesn't apologize for it. The chair at the head of the table is still mine. It always was. I keep coming back to the scratches on the kitchen table. 3 sets of them, in different places, from years of Lego pieces scraping across the wood when Caden was small. I never sanded them out. I liked them there. They were proof that something real had happened in this house, that a child had grown up here, that a father had stayed. I think about that a lot now, what it means to stay. Caden didn't stay. Not in the way that matters. He was physically present for years, eating at that table, sleeping under that roof, borrowing money I didn't know he was taking. And the whole time, some essential part of him had already left, had already decided that what I had built was something to be taken rather than something to be honored. I don't know exactly when that happened. I've turned it over enough times that I've stopped expecting a clean answer. What I do know is this: the consequences he is facing now are not something I did to him. They are the shape of what he chose, pressed back against him by simple reality. You forge a signature, there is a legal consequence. You drain accounts that are not yours. Someone eventually notices. You build a lie on top of a lie on top of a relationship, and at some point the whole structure comes down. It was always going to come down. I just happened to be the one standing there when it did. I think a lot of people, when they hear a story like mine, focus on the betrayal. And yes, the betrayal was real. But what I find myself thinking about more is the patience. Not mine, though I did wait 3 months, and those were 3 of the longest months of my life. I mean Erwin's patience, the way he sat at my kitchen table in September and laid out every document, every transfer, every forged line, and never once got ahead of himself. He is 67 years old and he still does the work. He still checks his assumptions. He still asks the next question even when he thinks he already knows the answer. There is a kind of intelligence in that. Not cleverness, not just being smart, but the discipline to use what you know carefully, to not let emotion make you sloppy. That is what protected me. That is what gave the evidence its weight in court. And I think about what it cost me to sit across from my son at dinner for 3 months, knowing what I knew. People ask me how I did it. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I think it was the same thing that kept me going after his mother died. The same thing that got me through the first few years of running a business alone. The same thing that makes you get up and cook a 19-pound turkey for 9 people, even when you already know the day is going to end with police at your door. You just decide that the truth is worth the discomfort of waiting for it. You decide that doing the right thing, even when it is the harder thing, even when it costs you something you cannot get back, is still the only choice that lets you live with yourself. Caden is going through the legal process now. I will not pretend that doesn't hurt. It does. It hurts in the specific, quiet way that only a parent can understand. Not like a sharp pain, but like something structural, something that changed the shape of the room you live in. But I am still in this house, still at this table, still making coffee in the morning and looking out the same kitchen window I have looked out of for 31 years. The scratches on the table are still there too. I'm not sanding them out.